You've probably heard the term Wu Wei before. Most people think it means do nothing. That's why their relationships stay stuck. They're waiting for things to change while doing absolutely nothing. Or worse, they're forcing harder, trying to convince someone to feel differently, manipulate outcomes, control what's uncontrollable. Neither works. And here's what's interesting. The ancient masters knew something about this that we've completely forgotten. Wu Wei doesn't mean passivity. It means something radically different. And I'm going to show you exactly how it works. Because once you understand the mechanism, you can apply it immediately in conversations, in conflicts, in relationships that matter to you. Let me start with the result this method produces. A CEO I worked with hadn't spoken to his teenage daughter in months. Not angry silence, just disconnected. He'd tried everything: long talks, logical arguments, buying her attention. Nothing landed. He was exhausted from the effort. Within 2 weeks of applying what I'm about to teach you, she started initiating conversations with him. Not because he changed his approach, because he changed what he was doing underneath. That's the power of understanding Wu Wei. Now, why does this work so differently from what you've probably been taught? You've likely heard some version of this. Control what you can control, accept what you can't. That's Stoicism. It's built on the idea that willpower and discipline are your tools. You set your intention, you push, you stay resilient when resistance shows up. The problem with this in relationships is fundamental. The more you try to control or force an outcome, the more you create resistance in the other person. It's physics. Action creates reaction. Push creates counterpush. So you end up in an exhausting cycle where your effort actually generates the opposite of what you want. Taoism offers something completely different. It says, don't fight what's trying to happen. Instead, read what's already happening and remove the blocks you created. That's Wu Wei. That's the whole game. Here's what most people don't realize. In any relationship, there's already a current running. There's already something the other person wants, needs, is trying to communicate. But because you're pushing in a different direction, you can't see it. You're too busy fighting. The moment you stop fighting, not by doing nothing, but by getting accurate about what's actually true, everything changes. Let me break down the actual process. There are 3 steps to Wu Wei in relationships, and they have to happen in this exact sequence, or you'll fall back into forcing. Step 1. Sensing the true dynamic. This is where most people fail immediately. They think they know what's happening. They think the other person is resistant, or doesn't care, or is being difficult. But they're wrong. They're reading their own projection, not reality. Sensing the true dynamic means you get quiet enough to notice what the other person actually needs or is trying to communicate, beneath what they're saying. In the CEO's case, he thought his daughter didn't want his attention. That was his story. The truth was different. She wanted his attention, but she wanted it without the agenda. She sensed he was trying to fix something. That created resistance. How do you sense accurately? You listen without planning your response. You notice their energy, not just their words. You ask yourself, what is this person genuinely trying to communicate right now? Not what do I want them to be communicating? What are they actually communicating? This step requires you to slow down. Most people can't do this because they're already 3 steps ahead, already planning what they're going to say next. You have to actually be present. The Taoists call this ting, deep listening. It's not passive, it's hyperactive attention directed at understanding. But there's a problem here that stops most people cold. When you start sensing accurately, you often discover that what the other person actually wants conflicts with what you want. That's uncomfortable, so people skip this step. They go back to forcing because at least forcing feels like they're doing something. Sensing feels like you're admitting defeat. You're not. You're just gathering intelligence. Stay with me. Step 2. Removing your resistance. This is the counterintuitive part. Most people think removing resistance means you surrender your desires. You don't. You remove the internal fight about what's true. Here's what happens in most relationships. You know what you want the outcome to be. You're emotionally invested in it. You can't imagine anything else working. So you fight to make that outcome happen. You present arguments, you cajole, you withdraw affection if they don't comply. These are all forms of force, and every bit of force generates equal counterforce. Removing resistance means this: you acknowledge what's true. They're not responding to pressure. The current conversation isn't landing. They want something different than what you're offering. And you stop fighting it. You don't surrender your needs. You just stop the internal civil war. In practical terms, what does this look like? You might say something like, "I notice you're not really present when I bring this up. That tells me something. Maybe this isn't the right approach. Help me understand what you actually need from me." That's removing your resistance to what's true. The CEO did something like this. He stopped trying to convince his daughter that their relationship was broken and needed fixing. He acknowledged that his approach wasn't working. He removed the resistance he had to the possibility that maybe he was wrong about what she needed. That one shift, that removal of his resistance to a different reality, changed the entire dynamic. But there's still something missing at this stage. If you just remove resistance and do nothing, that's not Wu Wei either. That's just quitting. Step 3 is where the actual power enters the system. Step 3, aligning with the natural outcome. This is where people get confused because it sounds like you're supposed to magically know what will happen. You're not. You're supposed to align yourself with what's already trying to emerge, and then take the smallest action that supports it. Think of it like sailing. You can't control the wind, but if you understand the wind, you can position your sail so the wind carries you where you want to go. That's alignment. You're not fighting the current, you're using it. When you've sensed accurately and removed your resistance, you can now ask, what's the smallest action I could take that aligns with what this person actually wants? Not what I want them to want, what they actually want. For the CEO, this was simple. His daughter wanted him to be interested in her life without trying to fix her. So his aligned action was, ask her about what she's interested in. Actually listen. Don't offer solutions. Don't bring up the past. Just show interest. That's it. That's the action that flowed from accurate sensing and removed resistance. It wasn't no action. It was the exact right action because it aligned with what was already trying to happen. What I want you to notice is this. The CEO didn't change his daughter's mind. He didn't convince her of anything. He didn't force anything to shift. He removed the block, his resistance to a different reality, and she naturally moved toward him. The power wasn't in his effort. The power was in his alignment. Now here's the question you're probably asking. What happens if I skip steps? What if I just go straight to step 3? you'll fail. This is why people think Wu Wei doesn't work. They skip the sensing. They think they know what the other person needs. They align with their own assumption. And when nothing changes, they think the technique is garbage, or they skip step 2. They sense accurately, but they don't remove their internal resistance. So they're aware of what's true, but they're still fighting it internally. That inner conflict is visible. It radiates out. People can feel you're not actually aligned. You're just pretending. Trust breaks down further. The sequence matters. Sensing without removing resistance feels fake. Removing resistance without sensing creates passive emptiness. Alignment without the first 2 steps is just hope. All 3 together create something else. Authentic influence that feels effortless to both people. This is what the ancient masters understood. Wu Wei isn't about effort versus non-effort. It's about accurate effort. Effort that's aligned with what's true, what's wanted, what's trying to emerge. You can apply this today. In your next conversation with someone important, try this. Get genuinely quiet. Sense what they actually want underneath their words. Notice where you're resisting that reality. And then ask yourself, what's the smallest action I could take that honors what they want, not what I want them to want? That's Wu Wei. That's effortless action. And once you feel how it works, you'll understand why the masters taught it for 2,500 years. The power isn't in forcing. The power is in reading what's already trying to happen and removing the blocks you created. Start noticing where you're forcing in your relationships right now. Start practicing these 3 steps. You'll be surprised how quickly things shift when you actually remove your resistance instead of doubling down on it. If this helped, hit like, subscribe, and keep it simple. See you tomorrow.